Hello. In this video, I will do an ASVAB Math Knowledge Practice Exam 4. Okay, let's begin. Okay. So question 1 says evaluate. So this is more like a order of operation problem, PEMDAS. I mean, it's not, this one's not too difficult. Do not FOIL out the -2 with the -3 and the -4. What you want to do is see if you have a parentheses. We do. We have two parentheses. Here's one. Here's the other. Then what you want to do is simplify the parentheses. So this -5 is already simplified. This -3, -4, it's only one order of operation. What's -3 and -4? -7. So clean that up first. Do the parentheses. -3 and -4 is -7. And then you have -3 and -5. And then what you do next is go down. Do we have an exponent? No. Do we have a multiplication? Yes, we have two, right? -2 times -7 is +14. -3, -5 is +15. And when you put it all together, what's 15 plus 14? It is 29. Okay, so that is letter D. Okay, question 2 says, how many cubes with sides 2 inches and a length that can be fit in a box with dimensions of a 4 by 3 by 2? So yeah, imagine you have like this cube. And what is a cube? It's like a six figure face. But what we got to do is let's find the volume of one cube. So what is the volume of a cube? It's basically length times width times height, right? So in a cube, they're basically all sides of a square. So we know that the length is, so they're saying this is 2 inches. So the length is 2 inches, the width is also 2 inches, and the height is also 2 inches. And then when you put it all together, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So it's 8 inches cubed. Okay. Now what we're doing is imagine putting this tiny cube in a box that's also a 4 by 3 by 2. But what we got to do is because everything is in inches, so don't get that confused. Because everything is in inches, we got to convert everything into inches. So we got to convert the 4 feet into inches, the 3 feet into inches, and 2 feet inches, right? So let's do that. 4 feet, you know that 1 feet is 12 inches, right? And then you could put a little one, and then the feet disappear. And then remember, multiplying fractions, you multiply across. So 4 times 2 is, I mean, 4 times 12 is 48. And then 1 times 1 is 1. Now do the same thing with feet, 3 feet. So 3 feet times feet on the bottom and then inch on the top. So we know that in 1 feet there's 12 inches, and then put invisible 1 and then multiply across. So what's 12? 3 times 12? Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and then 1 times 3 is 3 over 1, which is really 36 inches. And the next one is 2 feet. So let's convert that to inches. We know that for 1 feet, there's 12 inches. So what's 2 times 12? 24 inches. Okay. So let's find the volume. Now we kind of have a problem. On the test, you can't use a calculator. So you kind of have you're going to have, it's kind of difficult to multiply 48 by 36 by 24, right? So instead of like doing that, what we'll do is round to the nearest whole number. So starting with 48, That rounded to the nearest whole number would be 50, right? Why? Because uh 4 is the whole number, and then you look at the neighbor. If it's 5 or beyond, you round, right? What about 36? What would be 36 rounded to the nearest whole number? 40, right? Right? 3 is the whole number. Look at the neighbor. 6 is 5. 6 is definitely 5 and beyond, so you round. And then 24 rounded to the nearest whole number would just be 20. So this is a lot easier than doing 48, 36 by 24, especially when you have a time limit. So what's 50 times 40? That's easy, right? Well, I know that 5 times 4 is 20, and then you just bring down the two zeros. So that's good to add two extra zeros. And then what's what is this? 2000 times 20. Well, I know that 2 times 2 is 4, and then you just count how many zeros. So this has one, two, three, and then this has 1, so there should be a total of 4 zeros. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we found the volume of this box. Then they're asking you how many cubes. So that means you're going to divide it by 8. So what's this divided by 8? I think that's like 40,000. So you could do the box. 2, 3, 4. And then how many times does 8 go into 40? 5, right? Comes out nicely. And then bring down the 0, bring down the 0, bring down the 0. Okay. So which of these choices is cl very close to 5,000? It's not 36, that's too small. It's not 108, too small. 4,126, that's way too small, right? Even if you round to the nearest whole numbers, 4,000, that is not near to 5,000. What about 5184? That's the closest thing to 5,000, right? So it's going to be D. Okay, so that's what I did. So let me recap what I did. So at first I found the volume of this small cube. We know the volume of a cube is length times width times height. So it's 2 by 2 by 2, which is 8. Then I got to take the volume of this box. Now, what I did, because everything is in inches, I had to convert it in everything into inches. So that's how I got 48 inch, 36 inch, and 24 inch. Then I had to find the volume. So it's length times width height. But the thing is, I couldn't use a calculator. So what I did is I rounded to the nearest whole number. So 48 rounded to the nearest whole number is 50. 36 rounded to the nearest whole number is 40. And then 24 rounded to the nearest whole number is 20. That's a lot easier to multiply now, right? Because 50 times 40 is 2,000, right? 5 times 4 is 20, and then add the zeros. And then 2,000 times 20 is easy, which is 40,000. 40,000, right? And then divided by 8, because we want to know how many cubes. That's easy, and I get 5,000. So that's how I get letter D. Hey, sometimes you do have to sometimes it is easier just to round. Okay. Number 3, simplify. So this one, if it was all plus, you wouldn't even need the parentheses. You would just collect like terms. But the thing is, you have a little bit of, you have a minus right in the middle, or I like to think of it as like an invisible -1. So you're going to have to FOIL out this -1. So it's going to be negative. It's only right here. So FOIL out that -1. So that'd be negative 2x squared, negative x, and positive 4. Then over here, this is a plus, and then this is a plus. So you could just bring it down. And then over here, yeah, just bring that stuff down. And then it's all about collecting like terms. So always go with the highest power and then below. So my highest power are x squared. So I have a 4x squared here and a negative 2x squared. That is going to be positive 2x squared. All you do is just combine the coefficient. Do not multiply the exponents. And then what's my next highest power? Let's see. I have a negative 3x here, a negative 1x there, and a positive 3x there. So the 3x and the negative 3x cancels, and then you're left with negative x. And then what about our constant? So we have a constant 6, a 4, and a negative 5. So 6 plus 4 is 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. Okay, so you have 2x squared negative x plus 5. So that would be letter B. Yeah, 2x squared negative x plus 5. Okay. Okay, question 4 says, which of the following expression represents the cost of 7 notebooks and 4 pens if notebook costs 3 times as much as pens? So if you look at all the answers, none of them is in dollar signs, right? Everything is in terms of N or P. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would label my variables. Right? So maybe I can say if we're dealing with notebooks and pens, so maybe I can say N for notebooks and then P for pens. Okay. Then what we got to do is just kind of come up with the equation. So the cost of 7 notebooks. So how do I say 7 notebooks? It would be 7N because we said that N represents notebooks and 4 pens. So that's going to be plus 4P. Okay. So I think that's my first equation. And then my second equation says if notebook costs 3 times as much as pens. So how would I write that as an equation? If notebook costs 3 times as much as pens. So I'm going to say N equals 3P. Okay. So what am I going to do with this equation? Well, what you're going to do is substitute this back into where we see an N, right? So you're going to plug it back into this N right here. So it's going to be 7 times N, and N is 3P plus 4P. Clean it up a bit. 7 times 3P is 21P plus 4P, and then that would be 25P. So letter D. Okay, question 5. We have 0.072 divided by 0.03. So this is just dividing with decimals. So what you got to do is this do your box thing, right? The numerator always goes inside the box, so 0.072. The denominator always goes outside. Then what you're going to do is like, because we can't have decimals on this side, so what you have to do is count how many decimal places, total amount of decimal places. So how many decimal places this has? This is exactly 1, 2. And then you're going to move it 2 places to the right over here. 1, 2. Okay, so now you're going to have a new equation. So 0.03 is 003 dot, but you don't have to include these trailing zeros, right? You don't have to include those zeros, so it's really just 3, and then it's going to be 007 dot 2. Okay, line them up. You could pretend these trailing zeros does not exist, so it's really 7.2, and then how many times is 3 going to 7? Twice. So that's 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down the 12. How many times is 3 going to 12? 4. So your answer is 2.4. So that would be letter A. Okay. Question six, we have 4/5 divided by 5/4. So how do we divide fractions? What you could do is you can either cross multiply or you could change this divide sign into a multiplication, and then you're going to have to flip the 5/4. So take the reciprocal of 5/4, which is 4/5. Okay. Now when you're multiplying fractions, you may multiply across. You don't. So what's 4 times 4? 16. And then on the bottom, what's 5 times 5? 25. Now, do you think this can be reduced? I don't think so. So we can't reduce it, so your final answer is C. Okay. Question seven, if A equals 4 and B equals -2, evaluate A squared times B. So all you got to do is substitute in your values. So A is 4 square, and then B is -2. So what do you do first? Well, according to pandas, we don't have parentheses. Well, we do, but it's already done. We do have an exponent. So we do the 4 square first, so 16. And then we do have a multiplication, yes. So it's 16 times -2, -32. Okay, so it's letter B. Okay, number eight, 1/5 of students in a school are enrolled in advanced math class. If 150 students are enrolled in advanced math class, how many students are there in total? So the 150 doesn't represent the total amount of students. So what we're gonna have to do is somehow come up with an equation. So they're saying that 1/5 of the students in school are enrolled in advanced math class. If 150 students are enrolled in advanced math class, how many students are there in total? So that's like saying 1/5 of the total students, total amount of students, we don't know, so I'll call it T, um, is equal to 150, right? And then what we got to do is solve for the T because that represents your total amount. So it's going to be 1/5, and then of means multiplication. And then what you're going to do is to solve for T, you're going to get rid of this 1/5 by multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of 1/5, which is 5. So what's 150 times 5? That is going to be 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 1 times 5 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So there's a total of 750 in total. Okay, question 9. If x minus 5 equals 5 minus x, what is the value of x squared? So this one you might just have to solve for x. So what I would do first is get all the x's on one side. So maybe add x here, add x there, and you get 2x minus 5 equals to 5, right? Then what I would do is get this constant to the right. So this -5 to the right, or get all the constants on one side. So add 5, and you get 2x equals to 10. Solve for x, you're going to divide this by 2, and I get 10 over 2 is 5. Then that's not our answer because they're saying what is the value of x squared? So just replace x with 5, square that, and you get 25. Okay, letter D. Number 10, question 10. If 18 over 72 minus 6/9, what does that equal to? So when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you need what's called an LCD, lowest common denominator. So how do you find the LCD? So we have 1872 minus 6 over 9. So I just realized, okay, so I just realized this before you try to figure out your LCD and making your factor tree, you can try to reduce. I think that's what I should have done first. So 6 ninths can be reduced by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay. What about 18 over 72? Can that be reduced? I want to say 18. Is that even? Let's see. Yes, they're both divisible by 18. So this is 1 over 4. Now, this is a lot easier to work with to find your LCD. So what you got to do is look at the numbers on the bottom. So your bottom is a 4 and a 3. And then what you want to do is make a factor tree unless it's prime. So 3 is prime because a prime number can be only times by 1 in itself. So you could just put 3 here on the bottom. And then 4 is not, it could be broken down as 2 times 2, or you could think of it as 2 square, right? Okay. So these are your bases on the bottom. We have a 2, a base of 2, and a base of 3. So they're different bases, right? This is a base of 2, this is a base of 3. So when you have different bases, just put it all together, bring it down. 2 square times 3, and then 2 square is 4 times 3, that is 12. Okay, so my LCD is 12. So yeah, so on the bottom, so let's look on this side. So what do you have to multiply 3 to get 12? 4. And then what do you have to multiply 4 to get 12? 3. So on the bottom is just 12. And then 3 times 1 is 3. And then 4 times 2 is 8. And then you have still a minus in the middle. So what's 3 minus 8? -5. Yes. And then I don't think it could be reduced. So I'll always say C. Okay, question 11. If 5x plus 4 is divided by 2 and the result is 7, what is the value of x? So what, yeah, if 5x plus 4 is divided by 2 and the result is 7, what is the value of x? So what they want is they want you to create an equation and then solve for x. So 5x plus 4 is divided by 2 can be written as 5x plus 4 all over 2. Then the result is 7, which is means equals to 7. Then how are you going to solve for x? So what you're going to do is to solve for x, you can cross multiply. So yeah, because there's only two sides you can cross multiply. So this 7 has an invisible 1, and then you may cross multiply. So what's 1 times 5x plus 4? 5x plus 4 equals 2. And what's 2 times 7? 14. And then you can solve for x. So now what you're going to do is subtract 4. And what's 14 minus 4? 10. Solve for x by dividing both sides by 5. And then you get x equals 10 divided by 5 is 2. Okay, so that is your x value, positive 2. Not too bad, right? Okay, question 12. We got to simplify this radical. We have 12 radical 7 all over radical 3. So that's the same thing as 12 radical 7 all over radical 3. So what would you do next is you don't want a radical on the bottom, so you rationalize the denominator. So to get rid of this radical 3, you're going to multiply top and bottom by radical 3. Okay. And then on the bottom, let's do the bottom real quick. What's radical 3 times radical 3? It's technically radical 9, which is positive 3, right? So you could think of it as if you're multiplying two radicals of the same number, the radical disappears and you're just left with that number. But radical 3 times radical 3 is technically radical 9, which is positive 3, right? Now, what about the top? What's 12 radical 7 times radical 3? Well, what you could do is multiply the 7 and 3 because they both have a radical. So what's 7 times 3? 21. That's radical 21. And then you're still left with this 12. Anything else you can do? Yes, you can divide the 12 and then 3, which is 4. And then you have square root of 21. Okay, so that is letter A. Because 21 is prime. So you can't fix that 21. Okay. This one, a train travels 45 miles in 1 hour and 15 minutes. At this rate, how far will you travel in 3 hours? So this is a proportion problem. So how we're going to set it up is like this. Equal, and then horizontal, and then let's see here. How should we set it up? We could put mm, you could put miles on top and hours on the bottom, right? Because we're in miles and hours. So over here, this should be miles and hours. So the thing is, we have kind of have like in 1 hour and 15 minutes. So how do we set this up? So um, we could set it up like this. So we were given 45 miles. So you could put here 45 miles. Now be careful here. We have 1 hour and 15 minutes. Everything has to be in hours. So what we have to do is convert this 15 minutes into hours. So how do we do that? Well, we know that 15 minutes, we kind of do stoichiometry. And then we put minutes here and then hours there on the top. So what's the relationship between hours and minutes? Well, we know that in 1 hour, there's 60 minutes. Okay. And then multiply across. So 15 times 1 is 50. And then bottom, what's 1 times 60 is 60. And then what's 15 divided by 60? That is technically 0.25. Okay. So we have 1 hour and 0.25 hours. And then at this rate, how far will it travel in 3 hours? So put 3 here, and then our unknown is miles, right? And then what you're going to do is cross multiply. So what's 1.25 times x? 1.25x. And then what's 45 times 3? 135. Okay, solve for x. You're going to divide this by 1.25, 1.25. So what's 135 divided by 1.25? So you could do that little box thing. And then what you do next is, remember, you can't have a decimal here, so you gotta have to change the problem. So how many decimal places is here? 1, 2. And then the decimal is right here, so you add 2 zeros. So it's gonna be 125, 13500, and then decimal. So how many times does 125 go into 135? Just once. 135 minus 125 is 10. Bring down the 0. So how many times does 125 go into 100? 0. And then bring down the 0. How many times does 125 go into 1,000? Exactly 8 times. So it would be 108 miles. Okay, so we did have to convert that 15 minutes into hours. That's like an extra step. But it really is just a proportion problem. Okay. 14 says the diagonal of a square is 8 inches. What is the area of a square? So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with a square, right? And they're saying that you have this diagonal, which is 8 inches. Well, they want to know what is the area of a square. So what do we know about a square? In a square, all sides are the same. right? That's how it is. And what else do we know? A square. The area of a square is length times width, or you could think of it as side times side, or really it's just S squared. And so what we could do is we have two triangles. You see this triangle here. Let's just kind of draw it, right? This diagonal, this also in a square, they form corners of 90 degrees. So this is a 90 degree triangle. And then this hypotenuse is 8 because that's your diagonal. And you know that this side is equal to side, and then the side is the same thing as this side. So what we could do is use Pythagorean theorem because it's a right triangle. So it would be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay. Do we know one of our sides? No, we'll call it s. And then we're going to square it. Do we know the other side of the leg? No, we'll call it s. Do we know the hypotenuse? Yes, we know it's 8. So s squared is s squared. S squared is x squared. 8 squared is 64. Oops, looks like we're out of time because this is timed, but it's okay. What I'm going to do is continue with the problem. So what were we? Question 14. We were like really close. Okay, right here. So we stopped off here. So we're saying the diagonal of the square is 8 inches. What is the area of the square? So yeah. So what we're going to do is continue on. So what's s squared plus s squared? That is 2s squared, right? S squared plus s squared is 2s squared. It's not s4, right? We're adding. So, and then it's equals 64. Then what you're going to do is solve for s. So you're going to divide this by 2, and you get s squared equals 2. What is 64 divided by 2? It's 32. And then solve for s. So you're going to take the square root. So s equals square root of 32. Now, you don't have to simplify radical 32s. We just found one side length or one side. So each side is square root of 32. Do not simplify the square root of 32 because all we got to do is find the area. The area is length times width. So one of my length is square root of 32. One of my other area is square root of 32. And what is the square root of 32 times square root of 32? It's just positive 32, right? We said that if you're multiplying two radicals of the same number, the radical disappears and you're just left with that number. And then inches squared. Okay, so letter A. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. What's last one? So yeah, that's letter A. Last one here. Question 15. Find the product of 2 minus 3y and 2 plus 3y. So when they say product, they literally mean multiplication. So there's two ways you could do this. 2 minus 3y times 2 plus 3y. You could do the long way, right? You could FOIL it out. So if you do that, this would be 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3y is 6y. 3y, negative 3y times 2 is negative 6y. And then, careful, what's negative 3y times positive 3y? We're multiplying the constant and the letter. So negative 3 times positive 3 is negative 9. And then y times y is y squared. And then if you clean this up a bit, the 6y and the negative 6y is cancels. So you're left with 4 minus 9y squared. Okay, so it's letter A. The other way, there is a shortcut. This is called, because these are so identical, the only difference is this is a minus and this is a plus. It's a special rule. It's called the perfect square rule. right? So what is a perfect square? It's basically this a squared minus b squared equals parentheses a plus b times parentheses a minus b, right? And what we have is we have our problem looks like the right side. What we got to do is make it look like the left. So what we got to do is figure out our a. So my a is positive 2, and my b is always going to be positive. So our b is going to be 3y. So go ahead and put this a squared minus b squared. So it's going to be 2 squared minus 3y squared. So 2 squared is 4 minus 3y squared. Well, you square the 3, which is 9, and then you square the y, which is 9y squared. And you get the letter A. Okay. So yeah, that is the answer for that one. See, letter A. Okay, we can stop here because we are done.